The stars looked different this far from home. Captain Minho pressed his face against the viewing port of the new horizon and watched the alien sun cast strange shadows across the planet below. After 3 months of traveling through space, they had finally reached Kethvar, a dead world that held secrets older than human civilization. "Captain, we're ready for landing," said Commander Hieri from behind him. She was the military officer assigned to protect the expedition, though Minho doubted they would find anything dangerous on a planet that had been empty for thousands of years. Dr. Nari looked up from her research station, her eyes bright with excitement. "The scans show massive stone structures just below the surface. This could be the biggest archaeological find in human history." Wu Jin, their language expert, was already studying the few symbols they had detected from orbit. "I've never seen anything like these markings. They're not like any alien writing we've discovered before." The new horizon settled onto the rocky surface with a gentle thud. Through the ship's cameras they could see a landscape of red sand and twisted metal ruins. Ancient towers rose from the ground like broken teeth, and strange patterns were carved into every visible surface. "Everyone suit up," Minho ordered. "We don't know what the air is like down there." An hour later, the 4 humans stepped onto the alien world. Their boots crunched on crystal fragments that sparkled in the dim sunlight. The structures around them were massive, built from some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Nari immediately began taking pictures and measurements. "These buildings are at least 50,000 years old, maybe more. Look at the way they're constructed. No mortar, no joints. It's like they grew from the rock itself." Hieri kept her weapon ready as she scanned the area. "Something feels wrong about this place. It's too quiet." They walked deeper into the ruins, following a wide avenue lined with tall pillars. Each pillar was covered in the same strange symbols Wu Jin had seen from the ship. The writing was angular and sharp, like claw marks in stone. "Can you read any of it?" Minho asked. Wu Jin ran his fingers over the carved letters. "Give me time. Languages are like puzzles. You need to find the right pieces first." They set up camp in the shadow of a massive pyramid. As night fell, the alien moons cast an eerie glow over the ancient city. Around their small fire, the team shared their theories about who had built this place. "The architectural style suggests a highly advanced civilization," Nari said, studying her photos on a tablet. "But there are no signs of technology. No metal, no electronics, nothing." "Maybe they didn't need technology like we do," Hieri suggested. "Some species develop differently." Wu Jin had been quiet all evening, working on his translations. Finally, he looked up with a troubled expression. "I think I've figured out some of these symbols. This isn't a city, it's a warning." "What kind of warning?" Minho asked. "The word that keeps repeating. It translates roughly to devourers or consumers. And there's another word that appears often. It means never return." The next morning they explored deeper into the ruins. In the center of the city, they found a vast circular plaza surrounded by towering statues. Each statue showed a different alien species, some with multiple arms, others with tentacles or crystalline bodies. All of them were carved in positions that suggested fear or submission. In the middle of the plaza stood a single pillar, taller than the rest, covered in dense writing from top to bottom. "This looks important," Nari said, setting up her equipment to photograph every symbol. Wu Jin spent the entire day working on the translation. As the hours passed, his face grew more and more pale. Finally, as the sun began to set, he called the others over. "I need to read this to you," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "It's a historical record, written by survivors of something terrible." He cleared his throat and began to read from his notes. "Long ago, when the stars were young, there came a species from the dark between worlds. They called themselves the masters of all things, but we knew them as the devourers." Minho felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm evening air. Wu Jin continued. "The devourers were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They consumed entire worlds, not just the resources, but the life force itself. They enslaved species after species, forcing them to serve in their endless hunger. How long did this go on? Nari asked. According to this, thousands of years. The Devourers built an empire that stretched across the galaxy. No one could resist them. They had technology that seemed like magic, and their warriors were unstoppable in battle. What happened to them? Hieri wanted to know. That's the strange part, Wu Jin said, frowning at his translation. The text says they simply vanished. One day they were there, the next day they were gone. All of them, everywhere in the galaxy, just disappeared. That's impossible, Minho said. Entire species don't just disappear. The survivors thought so too. That's why they built all of this. Wu Jin gestured at the ruins around them. These monuments exist on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. They're warnings telling future generations to watch for the Devourer's return. Nari was studying her scanner readings. If this is true, then there should be similar ruins on other worlds. We could map their entire empire. But why haven't we found any of this before? Hieri asked. Humans have been exploring space for 200 years. Maybe we weren't looking in the right places, Minho suggested. Or maybe other species knew about this and didn't tell us. They spent the rest of the evening discussing the implications of their discovery. If the Devourers had once ruled the galaxy, then human civilization was built on the ruins of something, much older and more powerful. On their final day on Kaithvar, Wu Jin made one last discovery that changed everything. At the base of the central pillar, almost hidden by centuries of sand and debris, he found a small section of text that was different from the rest. This part is written in a different style, he said, carefully cleaning the symbols. It's like a postscript added later. As he worked to translate the final passage, the others packed their equipment. They were eager to return to Earth and share their discovery with the scientific community. Got it, Wu Jin said suddenly. The excitement in his voice made everyone stop what they were doing. What does it say? Minho asked. Wu Jin's face had gone, completely white. He read the translation slowly, as if he couldn't believe the words himself. To those who come after, know this truth. The Devourers did not vanish from the galaxy. They retreated to their homeworld, a blue planet orbiting a yellow star, in the sector the ancients called Sol. If you would know the face of your destroyers, look to the children of Earth, for humanity was the ancient power the galaxy feared to find. The silence that followed was deafening. All four humans stood frozen, staring at Wu Jin as the implications sank in. That can't be right, Nari whispered. You must have translated it wrong. Wu Jin checked his work 3 times, but the meaning was clear. According to this ancient warning, humanity were the Devourers. Earth was their homeworld. And somewhere, in their forgotten past, humans had once ruled the galaxy with power so terrible that other species still built monuments to warn against their return. We need to get back to Earth, Minho said finally. We need to find out if this is true. As the new horizon lifted off from Kaithvar, the 4 humans sat in stunned silence. Below them, the ancient warning monuments grew smaller and smaller, but the weight of their discovery pressed down on them like a physical thing. If the inscriptions were correct, then everything humanity thought they knew about themselves was wrong. They weren't explorers discovering the galaxy for the first time, they were conquerors returning home. Dr. Sungmin had studied ancient human history for 30 years, but he had never been called to an emergency meeting at the United Colonies Archaeological Institute before. When the message came from Director Kane, marked as classified and urgent, he dropped everything and caught the next transport to Geneva. The meeting room was packed with some of the most brilliant minds on Earth. Linguist Jiwoo sat across from geneticist Dr. Hyun, while several other specialists filled the remaining chairs. At the head of the table, Director Kane looked like he hadn't slept in days. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Kane began. What I'm about to show you cannot leave this room without official approval. The information comes from Captain Minho's expedition to Kaithvar. Kane activated the holographic display, showing images of the alien ruins and their strange inscriptions. But it was Wu Jin's translation that made everyone sit up straight. When Kane finished reading the final passage about humanity being the ancient Devourers, the room erupted in shocked voices. This has to be wrong, said Dr. Park, a specialist in human evolution. There's no evidence that humans ever left Earth before the 22nd century. Sungmin raised his hand for quiet. Actually, there might be. I've been finding anomalies in our archaeological record for years, artifacts that don't fit with accepted timelines, but I always assumed they were contamination or mistakes. He stood up and activated his own datapad, displaying images on the main screen. Look at this stone carving from a cave in Korea, dated to be 40,000 years old. The style doesn't match anything else from that period. And here's a metal fragment found in Egypt that contains alloys we only discovered in the last century. Jiwoo leaned forward, studying the images. The symbols on that Korean carving, they're similar to what Captain Minho found. Not identical, but there are definite patterns. Dr. Haeun pulled up her own research. I've been working on human genetic diversity, and there's something that's always puzzled me. About 50,000 years ago, there was a massive population bottleneck. The human gene pool suddenly became much smaller, as if most of humanity died out and only a few thousand individuals survived. That's not unusual, Dr. Park pointed out. Climate change, natural disasters, disease, lots of things could cause population crashes. Yes, but this one is different. When I map the genetic diversity, it looks like the survivors were specifically selected for certain traits. Almost like someone was deliberately breeding humans to be different. Kane nodded grimly. Different how? Smaller, weaker, with reduced brain capacity in certain areas. If I didn't know better, I'd say someone was trying to create a more docile version of humanity. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Sungmin felt a chill run down his spine. You're suggesting that ancient humans were more advanced and something happened to reduce us to primitives? I'm not suggesting anything yet, Haeun replied. But the genetic evidence supports that possibility. Over the next several days, the team worked around the clock to investigate the connection between Earth's ancient history and the Kethvar discovery. Sungmin led expeditions to archaeological sites around the world, looking for evidence of advanced prehistoric civilization. A cave system beneath the Himalayas, they found chambers carved with mathematical precision. The walls were covered in symbols that Jiwoo slowly began to recognize as an early form of the writing found on Kethvar. It's definitely related, she confirmed after hours of analysis. The grammar structure is similar, but this version is more complex, more sophisticated. Like the alien version is a simplified copy. In Egypt, ground-penetrating radar revealed structures buried far beneath the pyramids. When they finally managed to drill down and insert cameras, they found rooms filled with objects that looked more like technology than ancient artifacts. These formations aren't natural, Sungmin reported to the team. Someone carved these chambers with tools we can barely imagine. And look at this. He pointed to symbols etched into the walls. The same writing system, but even more complex than what we found in the caves. Meanwhile, Haeun made an even more startling discovery. While analyzing DNA samples from ancient human remains around the world, she found something that shouldn't exist. Every modern human carries dormant genetic sequences, she explained to the team during their evening briefing. DNA that doesn't express itself normally, but it's there in every single person on Earth. What kind of DNA? Kane asked. Sequences that would enhance neural connectivity, improve physical coordination, and increase problem-solving abilities. It's like we have the blueprints for a superior version of humanity locked away in our genes. Jiwoo looked up from her translation work. That matches what I'm finding in these texts. They describe humans with abilities that sound almost supernatural. Enhanced strength, mental communication between individuals, the ability to interface directly with their technology. Mental communication? Sungmin repeated. You mean telepathy? Not exactly telepathy as we imagine it, but something close. The texts describe humans working together as a unified consciousness when needed, sharing thoughts and coordinating actions across vast distances. As the weeks passed, the evidence continued to mount. Archaeological sites around the world revealed traces of advanced technology buried beneath layers of more primitive civilizations. The genetic analysis showed that all modern humans descended from a small group of survivors who had been somehow altered to suppress their advanced capabilities. But it was Jiwoo who made the breakthrough that tied everything together. Working, late one night in her lab, she finally decoded a complete text from the Egyptian chambers. "I need everyone here now," she called Kane at 3 in the morning. "I've found something incredible." Within an hour, the core team had assembled in her lab. Jiwoo's eyes were red from exhaustion, but her voice was steady as she read her translation. "This is a historical record, written by the last advanced humans before the Great Forgetting. It says that humanity had built an empire across the galaxy, just like the aliens described. But they weren't conquerors. They were guardians." "Guardians? Of what?" Haeun asked. "The galaxy itself." According to this text, there was a threat from outside our galaxy, something that consumed entire stellar regions. Humanity fought a war that lasted thousands of years to keep this threat from reaching the younger species. Kane leaned forward. "What happened to end the war?" "Humanity won, but the cost was enormous. Their empire was destroyed, their colonies scattered. The survivors made a choice. They would sacrifice their advanced civilization to ensure the threat never returned." "How could they do that?" Sungmin asked. Jiwoo continued reading. "They created a genetic virus that would suppress their advanced capabilities and reduce them to primitive levels. They deliberately forgot their history, their technology, everything. That made them dangerous. The idea was to let other species develop naturally while humanity slowly rebuilt from the ground up." "But why?" Kane demanded. "Why give up everything they had built?" "Because they realized that their power made them too dangerous. Even as guardians, they were changing the galaxy just by existing in it. Other species couldn't develop their own potential while humanity dominated everything." The room was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. If the text was accurate, then humanity's primitive period wasn't a natural part of evolution. It was a deliberate choice made by their ancestors to protect the galaxy. Haeun was the first to break the silence. "If this is true, then the genetic sequences I found aren't just dormant. They're locked away intentionally. The question is, what would happen if they were unlocked?" "According to the text," Jiwoo said, "the locks were designed to open gradually as humanity matured. The idea was that eventually, when humans had learned to be responsible, they would regain their full potential." "And when was that supposed to happen?" Sungmin asked. Jiwoo checked her translation one more time. The timeline they established suggested it would take about 50,000 years for the genetic locks to weaken enough for humanity to safely rediscover their true nature. Kane did the math quickly. 50,000 years from when? "From the date of this text," Jiwoo replied, "which, based on the archaeological context, was written approximately 50,000 years ago." The implications hit everyone at once. According to their own ancestors' plan, humanity was supposed to be ready now, ready to reclaim their position as the galaxy's guardians. But something had gone wrong with the timeline. The genetic locks were weakening, but humans weren't prepared for what was coming. "We need to run more tests," Haeun said urgently. "If people are going to start manifesting these abilities naturally, we need to understand what we're dealing with." As if summoned by her words, Kane's emergency communicator buzzed. The message was brief but alarming. "Report of unusual incident at Mars colony. Human subject displaying impossible physical capabilities. Requesting immediate investigation team." The ancient power was beginning to wake up, and humanity was about to discover just how much their ancestors had hidden from them. The first incident happened on Mars Colony 7. Engineer Taehoon was working alone in the deep mining tunnels when a support beam failed, trapping him under tons of rock and metal. When the rescue team finally reached him 6 hours later, they found him standing calmly beside a pile of bent steel beams that should have required heavy machinery to move. "I just pushed them aside," Taehoon told the investigators. "It didn't feel heavy." Dr. Dongwoo, the colony's chief psychologist, interviewed Taehoon extensively. "He shows no signs of lying or delusion," Dongwoo reported to Earth via secure transmission. "His body shows no signs of injury that should have resulted from being trapped. And the bent metal. Our analysis confirms that the stress patterns match human handprints, but the force required would be impossible for any normal person." Similar reports began coming in from across human space. On Luna Station, physicist Dr. Yuna solved a complex equation that had puzzled her for months. But when she tried to explain her reasoning, she couldn't remember how she had done it. "The answer just appeared in my mind," she told investigators, "like someone else was thinking for me." On the agricultural world of New Eden, farmer Kijung reported that he could sense exactly what his crops needed before any instruments showed problems. "I walk through the fields and I just know which plants are sick, which soil needs nutrients, where the water isn't reaching properly. My wife thinks I'm going crazy." Colonel Summon of the Colonial Defense Force was reviewing these reports when she made a connection that chilled her blood. Every enhanced incident occurred during moments of extreme stress or need. Every person involved described the experience as feeling natural or familiar, as if they were remembering rather than learning. She requested access to classified military records and spent 3 days analyzing historical human combat performance. What she found challenged everything the military thought they knew about human warfare. "Look at these battle reports," she explained to a secure conference. "With Earth Command, humans consistently outperform predictive models in combat situations. We adapt faster, coordinate better, and develop new tactics more quickly than any other known species. We always assumed this was due to superior training or equipment." "Are you suggesting it's something else?" asked General Park from Earth. "I'm suggesting that what we call human ingenuity might actually be genetic memory. Our ancestors weren't just advanced, they were warriors on a scale we can't imagine, and that knowledge is still locked away in our DNA." The evidence continued to pile up. News networks, despite government attempts at censorship, began reporting on the enhancement incidents. The public reaction ranged from excitement to terror as people realized that some humans were developing superhuman abilities. Engineer Taehoon found himself at the center of media attention when footage of him lifting a damaged transport vehicle was leaked online. "I didn't ask for this," he told reporters, "but I can't deny what's happening to me. Every day I feel stronger, like there's something inside me that's waking up." Dr. Yuna discovered that her enhanced mental abilities weren't limited to physics. She could understand complex alien languages after minimal exposure and solve mathematical problems that had previously taken teams of scientists months to work through. "It's not that I'm smarter," she explained to Dongwoo during one of their sessions. "It's like I'm remembering things I never learned." The breakthrough came when Taehoon and Yuna were brought to Earth for extensive testing. Dr. Hyun's genetic analysis revealed that both subjects showed activation in the dormant DNA sequences she had identified earlier. But more importantly, the activation pattern matched the theoretical models for the ancient human enhancement described in the recovered texts. "They're not developing new abilities," Hyun announced to the research team. "They're recovering old ones. The genetic locks our ancestors installed are failing, exactly as they were designed to do." Jiwoo had been working on translating more of the ancient texts, and her latest discovery provided crucial context. "I've found operating instructions for something called the Awakening Protocol. It describes how the genetic locks would gradually release as humanity reached certain technological and social milestones." "What kind of milestones?" Kane asked. "Space. Travel, unified global government, peaceful contact with alien species, advanced computing systems. The idea was that humanity needed to prove they had matured beyond their warlike past before regaining their full power." Sungmin cross-referenced the milestones with human history. "We achieved space travel in the 21st century, established the United Colonies government in 2298, made contact with the Zenthari in 2341, and developed quantum computers in 2356. According to this timeline, the awakening should have begun about 15 years ago. Which matches when the first unexplained incident started occurring," Dongwoo noted. "But why is it accelerating now?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Wu Jin, still analyzing data from the Kethvar expedition, made a disturbing discovery. "I've been reviewing the alien warning monuments and I found something we missed. There are references to activation triggers, events that would cause rapid awakening of dormant abilities." "What kind of events?" Colonel Somin demanded. "Discovery of the warnings themselves." According to the text, if humanity ever found these monuments and learned their true history, it would trigger an accelerated awakening sequence. The genetic locks would start failing much faster. Kane felt the blood drain from his face. You're saying that by discovering our past, we've triggered our own transformation? It gets worse, Wu Jin continued. The text suggests that rapid awakening is dangerous. The abilities are supposed to emerge slowly, allowing individuals time to adapt. But if the process is forced, it could result in psychological breakdown or loss of control. As if to confirm his fears, reports began coming in of enhanced humans losing control of their abilities. On Titan Station, a woman named Minji accidentally crushed a metal door handle when she was startled. On Europa Base, engineer Hyunwoo found that he could hear the thoughts of people around him but couldn't turn the ability off. We're seeing a spectrum of manifestations, Dongwoo reported during the daily briefing. Enhanced strength, improved mental processing, sensory augmentation, and in some cases what appears to be limited telepathy. But many subjects are struggling to control these abilities. The situation became critical when the first fatality occurred. A construction worker named Seojun on Ganymede Station experienced a sudden surge of enhanced strength while operating heavy machinery. Unable to control the increase in his capabilities, he accidentally caused a structural collapse that killed 3 co-workers. The public is starting to panic, Colonel Soman reported. There are calls for enhanced individuals to be quarantined, or worse. Some colonies are refusing to accept anyone who shows signs of awakening. But the most troubling development came from deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors designed to watch for asteroid threats had detected something far more concerning: artificial signals from outside the solar system. The transmission patterns don't match any known alien technology, reported Chief Communications Officer Jamin from the monitoring station on Pluto. They're clearly artificial, but they're coming from multiple directions at once, as if they're surrounding our entire stellar region. Taehoon, whose enhanced abilities had continued to develop, made an unexpected connection. During one of his training sessions with military personnel, he suddenly stopped mid-exercise and stared into space. "Something's coming," he said quietly. "I can feel it, like a pressure at the edge of my mind." Dr. Yuna experienced something similar while reviewing astronomical data. The patterns in the signals, they're familiar somehow. Like I've seen this before, but I know I haven't. When Heun analyzed the brain scans of enhanced individuals, she found increased activity in regions associated with memory and pattern recognition. It's like their minds are accessing information that shouldn't be there. Genetic memory of things their ancestors experienced. The final piece of the puzzle came when Jiwoo completed her translation of the most ancient human texts found beneath the Himalayas. What she discovered made everyone understand the true scope of what was happening. The original threat that humanity fought against didn't just disappear, she announced during an emergency session. According to this text, it was only driven back beyond the galactic rim. The ancient humans built a monitoring system to watch for its return. What kind of monitoring system? Kane asked. The enhanced humans themselves. The genetic modifications weren't just about suppressing dangerous abilities. They were about creating an early warning system. When the external threat approaches, human DNA responds by activating dormant capabilities. The implications were staggering. The enhancement incidents weren't a malfunction or premature activation. They were humanity's ancient warning system activating because the enemy was coming back. "How long do we have?" Colonel Somin asked. Jiwoo checked her calculations one more time. "Based on the signal patterns and the rate of awakening acceleration, I estimate the threat will reach our galaxy within 6 months." The room fell silent, as everyone realized what this meant. Humanity was awakening to their true potential not because they were ready, but because they needed to be. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the signal detection. Ambassador Kiwan stood before the massive assembly chamber, watching as representatives from 200 species filed into their seats. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. At the center of the chamber, the insectoid Vectar delegation chittered nervously among themselves. Their compound eyes glittered as they watched Kiwan with undisguised suspicion. To his left, the crystalline Zephyrians hummed in harmonic frequencies that spoke of deep concern. The slug-like Morians secreted stress pheromones that made the air shimmer with chemical warnings. Council leader Velnoth, a towering being with 4 arms and skin like polished stone, called the session to order. We are here to address the recent developments regarding the human species. Kiwan had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have readied him for the wave of hostility that washed over him, as every alien eye in the chamber focused on his position. He could feel their fear, their anger, their desperate need to find someone to blame for the approaching threat. "The evidence is clear," announced Velnoth, activating a holographic display that showed the Kethvar ruins and their decoded warnings. "Humanity is the species our ancestors knew as the Devourers. They have hidden their true nature from us since first contact." A Vectar representative rose from his seat, wings buzzing with agitation. "We have reports of humans displaying impossible abilities. They grow stronger by the day. How long before they reclaim their ancient power and return to their conquering ways?" Kiwan stepped forward to address the assembly. "Honored Council, humanity has no memory of these ancient events. We discovered our past at the same time the rest of the galaxy learned of it. We are not the same species that once ruled through conquest." "Then explain the enhancements," demanded a Zephyrian, her crystalline body flashing with angry red light. "Our sensors detect human abilities that should not exist. Your people lift objects weighing tons, solve problems beyond normal capacity, communicate without technology." "We don't fully understand the process ourselves," Kiwan replied honestly, "but our scientists believe these abilities are emerging because of an approaching threat to the entire galaxy." The chamber erupted in angry sounds, chittering, humming, roaring, and frequencies beyond human hearing. Velnoth had to use the sonic dampers to restore order. "You expect us to believe," Velnoth said slowly, "that the return of humanity's power is coincidental to the detection of unknown signals from beyond our galaxy?" "Not coincidental," Kiwan said. "Connected. Our ancient records suggest that humanity's original purpose was to guard against external threats. The awakening appears to be an automatic response to danger. On Earth, Admiral Yunji was facing her own crisis. The combined fleet, a massive armada representing the military might of dozens of species, had been mobilized and was moving toward human space. Intelligence reports suggested that the alien alliance was planning to contain humanity before the awakening could progress further. "How many ships?" she asked her intelligence officer. "Current estimates put the fleet at over 3,000 vessels. Admiral, every major species has contributed ships and troops. They're taking up position just outside our territorial boundaries." Colonel Soman reviewed the tactical situation with growing concern. "Our entire defensive fleet consists of maybe 200 ships, and most of those are exploration vessels with minimal weapons. If they decide to attack, we won't be able to mount effective resistance." But even as the military situation deteriorated, the awakening continued to accelerate. Enhanced humans were appearing in every human colony, and their abilities were becoming more pronounced each day. Tai-Hoon had been transferred to a military facility where scientists could study his development safely. His strength had increased, to the point where he could bend steel beams with his hands, but more importantly, he had begun to experience what he described as inherited memories. "I see flashes of things I never experienced," he told Dr. Dongwu during their daily sessions. "Battles in space, technologies I don't understand, and always the same feeling that we were protecting something important." Dr. Yuna's mental enhancements had evolved beyond simple problem-solving. She could now interface directly with computer systems, her mind processing data at speeds that amazed researchers. "It's like there are programs in my brain that are activating," she explained. "Knowledge that was stored and is now becoming accessible." The breakthrough came when Yuna attempted to access an ancient human data cache that had been discovered buried beneath New Geneva. The moment her enhanced mind touched the alien crystal matrix, the entire system came to life. "Oh no," she whispered, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. They're not just coming back. They're already here. The data she accessed revealed the true scope of the approaching threat. The enemy wasn't a single species or empire. It was a collection of entities that consumed entire galaxies, moving from one stellar region to another like a plague of cosmic locusts. They had been probing the edges of the galaxy for decades, testing defenses and gathering intelligence. The signals we detected aren't communication, Una reported to the emergency command staff. They're coordination patterns. The enemy has been infiltrating our galaxy for years, placing advanced scouts in strategic positions. How many? Admiral Yunji asked. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. They're small, nearly invisible to our sensors, but they're everywhere. Watching, learning, preparing. The news got worse when enhanced humans began reporting shared visions of the enemy's true nature. Unlike the diverse species of the current galaxy, these beings were a collective consciousness that assimilated everything in its path. They didn't conquer worlds. They absorbed them, turning living planets into extensions of their hive mind. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council, the debate had turned ugly. Several species were openly calling for humanity's destruction before the awakening could complete itself. The historical records are clear, declared the Moraean representative. The Devourers consumed entire civilizations. We cannot allow them to regain their full power. Kiwan tried desperately to maintain diplomatic relations. We're facing a threat that could destroy all of us. Humanity's awakening isn't the problem, it's the solution. Our ancestors developed these abilities specifically to fight this enemy. Your ancestors, spat the Vectar delegate, were the terror of the galaxy for thousands of years. How do we know you won't simply resume your conquests once you have the power to do so? The situation reached a breaking point when Captain Minho, who had discovered the original warnings on Kethvar, made an unexpected arrival at the council chambers. His ship had been intercepted by the combined fleet, but instead of being detained, he had been brought directly to the council as evidence of humanity's growing power. Show them, Velnoth commanded. Security recordings played showing Minho's journey through the combined fleet. When his ship's engines had failed due to alien interference, he had somehow repaired them using nothing but his hands and what appeared to be direct mental interface with the machinery. I didn't know I could do that, Minho admitted to the assembled delegates. But when I touched the controls, I just understood how everything worked, like I'd been repairing ships my entire life. The demonstration had the opposite effect from what the council intended. Instead of proving humanity's dangerous potential, it showed that even enhanced humans retained their individual personalities and moral compass. Minho had used his abilities to help his crew, not to attack the alien ships that had captured him, but the damage was done. The council voted to authorize containment measures against humanity, giving the combined fleet permission to establish a blockade around human space. This is a mistake, Kiwan said as the vote was announced. The enemy is coming whether you contain us or not. You're going to need our help. Velnoth's response was cold and final. If humanity truly wishes to redeem their species, they will submit to containment until the current crisis passes. Any attempt to leave human space will be considered an act of aggression. As Kiwan prepared to return to Earth with news of the Council's decision, he received an emergency transmission from Admiral Unji. The message was brief but terrifying. The ancient defense grid is activating. Whatever our ancestors built to protect this system, it's waking up. Around Earth, Luna, and Mars, structures that had been mistaken for natural formations for centuries were beginning to glow with internal light. Ancient machinery, hidden for 50,000 years, was responding to the approaching threat in the presence of awakened humans. The most dramatic activation occurred around Earth itself. What humanity had always assumed was a natural ring of asteroids in high orbit suddenly revealed itself to be a massive defensive platform. The rocks were camouflage, hiding weapons and shield generators of impossible sophistication. The power. Readings are off the charts, reported the monitoring station on Luna. These systems are drawing energy from sources we can't identify, and they're targeting the positions where the combined fleet is gathering. Admiral Yunji found herself facing an impossible choice. The alien fleet was taking position to blockade humanity, but the activation of ancient defenses might be interpreted as preparation for attack. One wrong move could start a war that would destroy. The first shot of the war came not from human weapons, but from a panicked Vector captain who misinterpreted the activation of Earth's defense grid. His plasma torpedo streaked across space toward what looked like an approaching human battle station, only to be harmlessly absorbed by energy shields that shouldn't have existed. Admiral Unji watched from the bridge of the Earth Defense Station as the alien projectile simply vanished. "Return fire?" asked her weapons officer. "Negative. Signal all ships to hold position and activate defensive measures only." Yunji knew that humanity's survival depended on not being seen as the aggressor, even as 3,000 alien warships prepared to attack their homeworld. But the ancient systems had their own priorities. As more weapons fire came from the combined fleet, the defense grid responded automatically. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from hidden platforms, not to destroy the alien ships, but to disable them. One by one, vessels throughout the enemy fleet found their weapon systems offline and their engines dead in space. "What's happening to them?" asked Colonel Soman from the tactical station. "The defensive systems aren't designed to kill," replied Dr. Yuna, who had been brought aboard to help interface with the awakening technology. "They're neutralizing threats while preserving life. It's like they were programmed by people who didn't want to cause unnecessary death." On the surface of Mars, Commander Hieri was discovering that the awakening had changed more than just individual humans. The enhanced soldiers under her command seemed to move and think as a coordinated unit, responding to threats before she even gave orders. "It's not telepathy exactly," she reported to Earth Command during a brief lull in the fighting. "But we can sense each other's intentions and coordinate without speaking. My Marines are fighting like they've trained together for years, even though most of them only met last week." The phenomenon was happening across all human military units. Soldiers who had never worked together before were operating with perfect coordination, sharing tactical awareness and adapting to battlefield conditions faster than any training could explain. But the enhanced humans weren't the only ones changing. As the conflict escalated, ordinary humans throughout the colonies began manifesting abilities at an unprecedented rate. The stress and danger of war seemed to trigger the awakening process in people who had shown no previous signs of enhancement. Europa Station, engineer Hyunwoo found that he could sense the structural integrity of the station's hull, feeling each impact from alien weapons like a physical blow. "I know exactly where the damage is and how to fix it," he told the station. "Commander, it's like the station is part of me now." Dr. Nari, the archaeologist who had first studied the Kethvar ruins, made a crucial discovery while analyzing the ancient texts under combat conditions. "The memory fragments aren't just random," she announced during an emergency briefing. "They're specifically about fighting this kind of enemy. Our ancestors left us a tactical database encoded in our own DNA. The revelation came as human forces engaged with advanced scouts of the real enemy, creatures that appeared as shifting shadows with technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Traditional weapons had little effect, but enhanced humans found that they could somehow disrupt the entities through direct contact." Taehoon, now leading a squad of enhanced Marines, described the experience. "When I touch them, they just dissolve, like my presence itself is poison to them. The stranger part is that I know how to fight them, even though I've never seen anything like them before." Meanwhile, Captain Minho had taken his ship beyond the battle zone to investigate the source of the alien signals. What he found at the edge of the solar system defied comprehension. A massive structure that seemed to exist partially outside normal space, with tendrils of dark energy reaching toward the inner planets. "It's some kind of harvesting mechanism," he reported back to Earth. "They're not here to conquer us, they're here to process us, to turn our entire solar system into raw material for their expansion." The scope of the threat became clear when Dr. Yuna managed to access more of the ancient database. "The enemy isn't from our universe originally," she announced to the gathered command staff. "They're from somewhere else, and they consume entire realities. Our galaxy is just the next course in an endless feast." But the awakening humans were learning to fight back, The enhanced abilities weren't random. They were specifically designed to counter the enemy's advantages. Where the shadow creatures could phase through normal matter, human touch could solidify them. Where their technology could manipulate space and time, human consciousness could create zones of stability. The turning point came when the combined fleet, still trying to contain humanity, found itself under attack by the real enemy. Shadow creatures materialized throughout the alien armada, beginning the process of converting ships and crew into extensions of their collective consciousness. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving distress calls from the Vector fleet. They're requesting assistance." Yunji didn't hesitate. "All units, break containment positions and engage the shadow entities. Coordinate with alien forces where possible." The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy's opinion of humanity began to change. Enhanced human, soldiers didn't just fight alongside their former enemies. They protected them, using their unique abilities to shield alien ships from the shadow creatures' assimilation attempts. Commander Hieri led a boarding action to rescue a Zephyrian vessel that had been partially converted by the enemy. Her enhanced marines moved through the crystalline ship's corridors, their presence somehow cleansing the shadow contamination as they advanced. "The humans are actually saving us," transmitted the Zephyrian captain in amazement. "Their touch destroys the shadow influence completely." Similar scenes played out across the battle zone as enhanced humans proved that their awakening abilities were perfectly suited to fighting the cosmic threat. But the cost was enormous. Each use of their powers left the humans drained, and some began to experience what Dr. Dongwu termed genetic memory overflow. "They're not just remembering how to fight," he reported from the medical bay. "They're experiencing the entire war their ancestors fought. 50,000 years of conflict, playing out in their minds simultaneously." Tehun was among those most severely affected. Between battles, he would stand motionless for hours, his eyes unfocused as he processed memories that weren't his own. "I can see them," he whispered to Dongwu. "The original Guardians. They fought this enemy across thousands of worlds, and they were losing until they made the ultimate sacrifice." "What sacrifice?" Dongwu asked. "They didn't just give up their technology and civilization," Tehun replied. "They gave up their individual consciousness. The final generation of Guardians merged their minds into a collective that could match the enemy's hive intelligence. But doing so meant they could never return to being human." The implications were staggering. If the ancient humans had won by sacrificing their individuality, what would that mean for the current generation? Would they have to make the same choice? The question became urgent when the main enemy force finally arrived at the edge of the solar system. What emerged from the dark between stars was larger than planets, a living mass of converted matter and absorbed civilizations that had been growing for eons. "How many galaxies has this thing consumed?" whispered Colonel Soman as she watched the readings pour in. "Based on the energy signatures," Dr. Yuna calculated, "at least 12 complete galactic clusters. We're looking at the accumulated mass and knowledge of trillions of civilizations. Faced with this impossible threat, the survivors of the combined fleet and the human forces found themselves working together out of pure necessity. Alien captains took orders from enhanced human coordinators, while human engineers worked alongside Vector technicians to adapt their weapons for the coming battle. But it was Dr. Jiwu who made the discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the deepest layers of the ancient texts, she found references to a backup plan, something the original Guardians had prepared in case the collective sacrifice wasn't enough. "They didn't just lock away human abilities," she announced to the Combined War Council. "They created a failsafe, a way for future generations to access the collective knowledge without losing their individual minds." "How?" demanded Admiral Yunji. "By working together willingly, instead of being forced to merge." The original Guardians discovered that voluntary cooperation between enhanced humans could create a temporary collective consciousness that was just as powerful as permanent merger. The concept was tested during the next enemy assault. Enhanced, humans across the battle zone focused their minds together, not losing their individuality but sharing their thoughts and abilities. The result was a coordination that surpassed anything the enemy had encountered before. "It's working," reported Captain Minho from his position near the enemy construct. "When we work together like this, we can actually hurt them. Their advantage comes from being a hive mind, but we can match that without giving up who we are." Bro, the final battle began not with weapons fire, but with a moment of perfect silence as every conscious being in the solar system felt the weight of what was approaching. The Void Collective had arrived in force, a mass of consumed galaxies, formed into a single hungry intelligence that stretched across space like a living wound in reality. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of his enhanced vessel, watching as tentacles of dark matter reached toward Earth itself. Around him, the combined fleet of humans and aliens looked pitifully small against the cosmic horror they faced. "All enhanced personnel, prepare for full coordination," Admiral Yunji announced across all channels. "This is what our ancestors prepared us for." Across human space, enhanced individuals closed their eyes and opened their minds to each other. Tai-Hoon felt his consciousness expand as he connected with Yuna, Yunwoo, Yeri, and thousands of others. But instead of losing himself in the collective, he found that his individual thoughts became clearer, supported by the strength of the whole. "I can see the enemy's structure," Yuna announced through their shared awareness. "It's not just one entity. It's millions of absorbed civilizations all forced to work together. But the control network has weak points." Through their collective perception, the enhanced humans could see what no scanner had detected. The Void Collective wasn't perfectly unified. Deep within its mass, traces of the original civilizations it had consumed still existed, trapped, but not completely destroyed. "There are survivors in there," Tai-Hoon reported with growing excitement. "Whole populations kept alive as processing units. If we can disrupt the control matrix, we might be able to free them," finished Yeri, her tactical mind already working on the implications. Turn the enemy's own absorbed forces against it. But first they had to survive the opening assault. The Void Collective launched waves of shadow creatures that poured toward the defending fleet like a living storm. Traditional weapons had little effect, passing through the entities without causing damage. "Enhanced units, engage at will," ordered Admiral Yunji. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. Enhanced humans moved through space in modified suits that responded to their thoughts, their bodies surrounded by fields of energy that could solidify shadow matter and disrupt the enemy's phase-shifting abilities. Commander Hieri led her Marines in a boarding action against one of the larger shadow constructs. As they moved through its twisted corridors, their presence acted like a virus in the enemy's system, creating zones where absorbed civilizations could remember who they had been. "We're getting signals," reported her communications officer. "The converted beings inside this structure, they're trying to communicate." Through the shared consciousness network, Dr. Jiwoo received fragments of these communications. "They're asking for help," she translated. "Some of these civilizations have been trapped for thousands of years, forced to serve the collective while remaining aware of what they've lost." The revelation changed the entire nature of the battle. This wasn't just a war between species. It was a liberation effort on a cosmic scale. Every shadow creature they touched, every dark construct they penetrated, revealed more trapped civilizations begging for freedom. But the Void Collective wasn't passive. As it realized that the enhanced humans posed a genuine threat, it began to adapt, sending larger and more sophisticated shadow forms against them. "The enemy is learning from our attacks," warned Colonel Soman from the Tactical Coordination Center. "It's developing countermeasures for our abilities." That's when Dr. Dongwu made a crucial observation. "The enemy can adapt to our individual abilities, but it's having trouble processing our collective coordination. It's designed to absorb hive minds, not voluntary cooperatives." "Then we give it something it can't understand," declared Ambassador Kiwan, who had been coordinating with alien forces throughout the battle. "We show it what true unity looks like." The plan that emerged was ambitious beyond anything previously attempted. Every enhanced human in the solar system would link their consciousness together, but instead of forming a simple collective, they would create a network that included willing alien participants. The Vectar have a natural collective consciousness, explained the insectoid captain who had originally opposed humanity. We offer our mental patterns to strengthen your network. Zephyrian crystal matrices can store and amplify thought patterns, added the crystalline delegate. We pledge our cognitive resources to the cause. One by one, representatives of species that had feared humanity just days before offered to join the unprecedented mental alliance. Not absorption or assimilation, but true cooperation between different forms of consciousness. When the network activated, the effect was immediate and devastating to the enemy. The Void Collective, which had spent eons consuming and controlling other minds, found itself facing a form of consciousness it couldn't comprehend. Voluntary unity that preserved individual identity while achieving collective action. It's working, reported Captain Minho as shadow creatures throughout the battle zone began to destabilize. Our combined consciousness is disrupting their control matrix. The absorbed civilizations are breaking free. The liberation was visible to the naked eye as regions of the Void Collective's mass began to change color, shifting from the dark absorption matrix to the brilliant light of freed consciousnesses, remembering who they were. But the enemy's response was swift and terrible. The collective began to consume itself, destroying the freed sections to prevent further rebellion. Entire civilizations that had just tasted freedom were being annihilated rather than allowed to escape. We have to stop it from destroying the survivors, Tehun said through gritted teeth, pushing his enhanced abilities to their limits. There's only one way, Dr. Yuna announced with grim certainty. Someone has to go into the core of the collective and manually disrupt the control matrix from inside. The mission was suicide, and everyone knew it. The core of the Void Collective was a concentration of absorbed consciousness so dense that any individual mind entering it would be instantly overwhelmed and consumed. Unless, added Dr. Heian from her research station on Earth, we send someone who isn't entirely individual anymore. She was referring to the enhanced humans who had been most affected by genetic memory overflow, those who carried the strongest connection to their ancestors' experiences. Taihun, who had been living with the memories of the original Guardians, understood immediately. The original Guardians are still there in our genetic memory, he realized. If I let them fully manifest through me, I could carry their knowledge and experience into the collective's core. That's not you coming back, warned Dongwu. Once you let the ancestral memories take full control, there's no way to separate your consciousness from theirs. Tehun was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of 50,000 years of genetic memory pressing against his mind. Maybe that's the point. Maybe this is what they were waiting for, a descendant willing to complete their sacrifice. But before he could volunteer for the mission, every other enhanced human in the network spoke at once. We all go. If one of us carries this burden, we all do, declared Hieri. That's what it means to be guardians. The final assault began, with every enhanced human in the solar system synchronizing their consciousness and allowing their ancestral memories to fully manifest. They became, for that crucial moment, the original Guardians reborn in new bodies but with the same purpose. Leading them was Tehun, but he was no longer just Tehun. He was the collective memory of humanity's greatest protectors, carrying 50 millennia of knowledge and sacrifice. Around him, his fellow enhanced humans became conduits for the ancient warriors, scientists, and leaders who had first faced this cosmic threat. They moved through the Void Collective's mass like antibodies in a diseased system, their presence causing cascade failures in the absorption matrix. Where they passed, trapped civilizations burst free in explosions of light and consciousness. At the core of the enemy construct, Taihun and the Guardians found what they were looking for: the original control consciousness that had started the collective's expansion across the universe. It was ancient beyond measure, a parasite that fed on intelligence itself. You cannot destroy me, it communicated through waves of mental pressure. I have consumed 1,000 galaxies. I am inevitable. No, replied the combined consciousness of humanity's guardians past and present. You are finished. The battle in the mental realm lasted only seconds but felt like eons. The parasite consciousness tried to absorb the Guardians as it had absorbed so many others, but found itself facing something it had never encountered, a collective that refused to be consumed, individuals who chose to work together while remaining themselves. When the control consciousness shattered, the effect rippled throughout the entire Void Collective. Without the central intelligence forcing unity, the absorbed civilizations finally broke free completely, their combined rebellion tearing the cosmic parasite apart from within. Across the solar system, beings watched in amazement as the Void Collective collapsed in on itself, its stolen mass converting back into the matter and energy of the civilizations it had consumed. Entire species that had been thought extinct for millennia emerged from the dissolution,